Hi students. In this video I want to talk to you about literary realism, which is the first literary movement we're covering in this class. This is really important material. It covers what we're reading for the first 5 or 6 weeks of the semester, so I would like you to take notes on this information. There is an outline that you can download in weekly content this week, or you can just take your own notes and pause the video whenever you need to write stuff down. So let's first talk about a basic definition of literary realism. This is a literary movement that attempts to portray ordinary life in realistic ways. So pretty much what you would expect from the word realism, right? It's literature that's realistic. This is a late 19th century movement in the decades immediately following the Civil War. But first I want to step back a few decades and look at what came before realism so that you can understand how this is different. So before the Civil War, the Romantic movement was in full swing in American literature and British literature. A lot of the literature from this period, particularly novels, featured improbable plots, things that wouldn't normally happen. So, for example, Frankenstein. A young man goes off to college and builds a creature out of dead body parts, and the creature comes to life. Things that wouldn't happen in real life. A lot of this literature was set in remote places and in faraway times. So the Scarlet Letter is set 200 years prior to when Nathaniel Hawthorne lived. A lot of the language is heightened. If you've read novels from this period, you know that it takes a little while to get into the rhythm of the language. Imagination, intuition, and emotion are all things that are really privileged in this literature. And so are individuals, the idea of the idealized individual, the romantic hero. Realism after the Civil War begins to do the opposite. Now, I want to talk about the dates here. These are approximate dates. We usually think about realism starting right after the Civil War and continuing into the early 20th century, about 1905. But those dates are a little bit fuzzy. We see characteristics of realism both before and after this, but we're talking about the heightened period of realism here in these decades. So, as you know, the Civil War brought about major changes. So after the war is over, we see a lot of people really wrestling with ideas of race in America. We continue to wrestle with these ideas. I don't mean to imply that this happened only during that time. But now we have enslaved peoples who are legally free. And how do we help them fit into society? How do we accommodate the mess that we made during slavery and during the war? Also questions of immigration and who is an American and how we define American. These are questions that we continue to wrestle with, but were of particular interest to a lot of writers during this period. Similarly, issues of gender. Women were expected, of course, to be in the home all the time, dealing only with domestic issues. So how do women writers deal with that? We'll talk about these things in weeks to come. We also see a lot of change in American literature because more and more economic and social conditions allow for the novel to grow as a genre. We see this before the war too. Increasing literacy, increasing audiences, urban growth and industrial expansion, and the rise of middle-class comforts mean that more people have time to write and read novels. Okay, let's go back to realism and how we might define it. I really like this definition. Realism is nothing more and nothing less than the truthful treatment of material. You're not going to see science fiction or fantasy here. This is from a scholar named William Dean Howells. Okay, back in 1889, he defined it this way. Another definition. Realism considers characters and events which are apparently the most ordinary and uninteresting in order to extract from these their full value and true meaning. In short, realism reveals. Where we thought nothing worth of notice, it shows everything to be rife with significance. From a scholar named George Parsons Lathrop. Now, I really like this definition because we see that word ordinary. We're going to see that word a lot more. Now, that word uninteresting might seem a little bit of a dig, but the idea is that these authors were interested in ordinary things and digging deeply and looking at what made the ordinary meaningful. One more definition. This comes from a later scholar from the 20th century. Realism is a strategy for imagining and managing the threats of social change. In other words, all those issues of race, of how to define American, economic changes, the gender issues and changes, changing roles for men and women, all of these issues were dealt with in literary fiction, in realistic fiction and other art of the time. Okay, so let's talk about some characteristics of a lot of literary realist texts. Note that you will see these characteristics in other kinds of texts too, but when we're looking at the literature of this period, these common themes and characteristics really emerge. First of all, the plots are linear. That means that they start at the beginning, they go through things in order, and they end at the end. You might have noticed in more recent examples of movies and books, they might start in the middle and then work backwards to tell you what led up to that moment, and there might be flashbacks and jumping around in the timeline. Not so with realist texts. They're very straightforward and they move from the beginning to the end in order. Also, the subjects are ordinary. These are about plausible events that could actually happen. Nobody's creating monsters or chasing whales or anything like that. Ordinary things are happening. The plots typically revolve around the complex choices characters have to make. They're faced with a moral dilemma. They have to make a choice. For example, in Huck Finn, this is an example I'm going to use a few times in this video. Huck Finn, the young boy, has to wrestle with this decision about whether to turn in his friend Jim, who is enslaved and who has escaped. Okay, so the characters, here's this word ordinary again, just ordinary people, no huge heroes here, middle or working class, and they're studied in depth. Characters are often more important than the plot. And these characters are generally able to act on their environment. They see something that needs to be done, they have a choice to make, and they can make it. That's going to change in the end of this period, and we'll talk about that later when we get to naturalism. The settings. You might guess the settings are ordinary places, not faraway lands, not exotic places, far-flung. They're ordinary and they're immediate. They're in the present. So they're not going to travel to the past or the future. Realist texts are dealing with things that have occurred in that period. Again, the language is ordinary. Now, for readers today, it might not seem so because language evolves, so the language to us might seem old-fashioned, but it was the ordinary language of the day. The narrators were objective. They reported rather than commenting on what they saw. They just tell us what they see. This is different for previous novels like Uncle Tom's Cabin, where the narrator was constantly inserting her anti-slavery opinions. The dialogue tends to be true to how ordinary characters would speak, so often you'll get vernacular, slang, conversational language from these characters, as well as dialect. So when you read Huck Finn next week, the excerpts I'm assigning, you'll see that both Huck and Jim speak in their respective dialects. Let's talk about the purpose of these texts. So the purpose of realist texts was often didactic, in other words, instructional. They wanted to teach a lesson, a moral. They wanted to offer a moral. And again, often this was about the complex social issues that people were thinking about in this time period. They also wanted to explore, as we saw earlier, the value and meaning of ordinary life in America. And of course, they wanted to entertain. They're writing fiction here. They're not writing journalism. So they also wanted to make it entertaining and fun to read. Here are some of the key figures from this period, at least some of the ones we'll be reading in the weeks to come. So to recap, when we look at Romanticism from before the Civil War, we see these improbable plots and these larger-than-life characters. But with realism, we see this word ordinary over and over again. Realism is real about ordinary lives and ordinary things that happen. And also that didactic purpose, that moral. Okay, so coming up, we're going to be looking in the next 5 or 6 weeks at some subsets of realism, including regionalism, which focuses on a specific part of the country, a specific place, as the name suggests. Psychological realism, which tends to focus on the internal thinking processes of the characters. And then finally, naturalism, which is like a darker, edgier version of realism. We'll talk about all of these in the weeks to come. So, as you move forward this week, just want to remind you to read the assigned text with these ideas of realism in mind. Read for the gist, first of all, and then return to the text if time permits to read for the smaller details. This week and most weeks I'll provide a reading guide with questions that will help guide your reading. But feel free to ask questions in our discussion boards about things that you'd like to know more about. I'm looking forward to you sharing your ideas, your observations about these texts in your discussion posts. And I hope you enjoy reading the ideas that your classmates and I are sharing too. Soak it in, enjoy the texts. These writers want to entertain you, but they also want you to learn something. So keep thinking about what that might be. I'll see you in our discussions.